them to change the behaviors if they're not in alignment with the values of the system and the company. We also expect our people to have a personal development plan. And the personal development plan doesn't necessarily have to be shared with everyone, but we do expect that each person in the organization has sat down and has written out a personal mission of what they expect, and then has articulated how they want to get there. Because if you take that driving personal development as one of the professional expectations of our leaders, and you take the personal development plan that people have, they need to be supportive of one another. This came to light when we were having a conference on the person's growth. We had titled the conference, Growth, the Person, the Job, and the Career. And the reason we did that is we found that our people were describing the employees who worked for them not by who they were as a person, but by their job and what they did. And we also found that because we didn't know who they were as a person and what their personal goals were, that in fact there were times when as coaches, we as leaders were being counterproductive or coaching them to do something that was counterproductive to where they wanted to go. So we might say that we were coaching them into a career which had nothing to do with where they wanted to go personally, and that in fact it became detrimental to them, and when it became detrimental to them, it became detrimental to the organization. Again, the importance of aligning the personal values and where they want to go with the values of the business. And certainly again, it's a personal expectation that each one of us will represent us well. And underlying that is respect. And respect, again, is in the broadest definition that includes all of our differences and includes those elements that we call the human asset which drive and energize the business. We also looked at the external environment and did some benchmarking to find out what it is that we needed to do to become world class. And that sounds like a quality tool, and it certainly is. But what we did is we had each level of the organization excuse me, go out and meet with the presidents of businesses, the CEOs of businesses, to find out what made the best sales leader. And we asked our middle management, our sales managers, to go out and talk to the telecommunications directors and MIS directors and said, what in your mind is a world-class sales manager? And we asked the same question of our AEs. And we asked our customers to describe for us what were the characteristics of those people, and if in fact they could name any. That started driving our definition of standards. So we include customer input in the process of how we were defining our values and our standards to achieve our objectives. From an internal perspective, we used quality. Now you could say that a lot of things I've been talking about certainly look like quality, but one of the things, since we learned the wrong way the first time we did it, is that we had to overcome the negative attitude toward quality, and so we really don't talk about quality in this process at all, other than that we are executing it based on the values approach. So we use quality to look at our internal processes to make sure that in fact the processes from the customer ordering something to the customer receiving it and is completely satisfied are functional, and that the processes within our own organization are working just as you would have to check the processes in your organization, because those processes become the basis of customer satisfaction. And certainly customer satisfaction is what has customers coming back to us and buying again, and which will make the business successful. And we apply these to personal growth. The quality process needs to be internalized in such a way that in fact we are using that process to improve who we are and how we behave and what our expectations are and how we're defining our relationships, so that we can get more clarity and more effectiveness in our personal lives, which then translates to the business. Our interim objectives are that we expect changed behavior. We expect changed behavior in person to person. And we expect improved competence in our people, improved competence in the quality of coaching and the sales we're making. Let me give you a couple of examples. To help support this, about a year ago, we adopted what we call virtual office. We sent all of our salespeople who had traditionally been in an office home, and we gave them the technology to be successful wherever they were, whether they worked at home or in the library or went to the baseball game or whatever, but they had the opportunity of working outside of the office environment. And what that did was that it improved the quality of sales. Why did it improve the quality of sales? Because we had a vision of what we wanted to accomplish and where we wanted to go. The people understood that, and they knew what the values were that we were expecting them to live by and the organization to live by and the behaviors that supported it through the standards. And because of that, when they left the confines or the nurturing of and warmth of the office, they had to stand on their own 2 feet and many times make decisions on their own. And so what ultimately happened is that they improved their competence because, number one, they became more knowledgeable about the products and services that we had to offer. And number two, in doing so, they took ownership of their own behavior and who they were and started taking ownership of the business. The most frequently quoted statement that we receive when we ask, what was the benefit of going to virtual office, was the fact that they feel like they now own a portion of the business. And by having very clearly stated objectives and standards, they know and we know that they're being successful. And it's very important that there's a lot of clarity around it. It sounds like the clarity of the vision statement again and its importance. Well, what are our keys to progress? Our keys to progress are that we involved the managers and created the standards from bottom up. Now, what does that mean? Well, by involving all of the managers and having the managers talking to the customers and gathering the information, the managers actually designed the expectations. And think for a moment what you do in your own lives. Generally, your standards are higher and you're more critical of yourself than you are of others. And by having the managers from the bottom of the business up create the expectations and standards, they created aggressive standards. They created standards which are going to take them a while to get through, some of that uncharted landscape. And also, they created standards which they owned, and that was very important. We laugh many times because if you ask our people about the standards, they say, well, those are so-and-so standards, who's the boss? And the boss said, time out, remember that you designed the standards. And it actually took about a year for people to go through the assimilation process to understand that they had created these and that they were their goals that fit into and were aligned with the direction we were going. Another key to progress has been our team events. And I say team events, and I hearken back to the point we talked about earlier, and that was the experience. It is vital for your teams to experience things together. And so one of the team events was we sent people to principle-centered leadership. And they go as a natural team because it's that team that needs to clarify their understanding. We sent them through cultural training to achieve world class. And in there, as you recall, I talked about the fact that it was that course that clarified for us the importance of having each group in a large organization define and articulate their vision in the words that they understood but were in concert with the vision of the corporation. And another team event was a human development fair, which solidified in our employees' mind what we were doing and that we were serious about the values of human growth and human development. And what we did at the human development fair was artificially divide the human into 6 categories. We had human spirit, culture, government, education, health, and family. And we divided up a very large ballroom and invited all of the community people in to set up booths to explain what they were doing and why volunteering and being involved was important. And our employees all came, and we thought, if we lose them after the first 15 minutes, it was a bust. But in fact, we had to throw the people out. They could not believe that we wanted them and were supportive of them, opening the eyes to what was going on in the community and affording them other opportunities to develop personally. Because in today's environment, and I'm sure it's true in yours, there are many times as businesses downsize, it's more and more difficult for people to get the experience of some of the skills that will make them more marketable in the future. And sometimes there are other avenues that people can personally use to develop. And all of those build to creating a better organization. And another key to progress is our constant reinforcement. We do inspect, we do check, we do verify that people are following the standards, and that the standards are staying consistent with the expectations of the customer base and where we're going. And as a matter of fact, we have increased our standards difficulty several times in the last 12 months. And again, the people did it as opposed to us. They were setting higher standards for themselves. And finally, we try to take mystery out of the business, which is another key to our progress. And what is mystery? Mystery in a sales organization is that no one knows what anybody's quota is or why they're different. Mystery is not understanding the compensation plan that you're being provided. Mystery in your organization might be one organization keeping information from others because they think it's a sense of power. And it's truly a sense of false power. The real power is when you take the mystery out of the organization and people can understand with clarity what's going on and align that behavior with the values. And that becomes a very essential ingredient to the progress. Well, there are some risks in this whole movement and this journey. And the risks are, first of all, that you have to face yourself. You have to face who you are, and I have to face who I am. Because no longer can I hide in the comfort of some false values. And so if I don't understand who I am, and I don't understand what my goals are, I will have a very difficult time executing a values-driven leadership and be successful. Another risk is that we must handle all the issues of fairness. And these can be very complex, just as I'm sure they are in your business. For example, are you unfairly treating one person because they look different? Are you unfairly treating another person because this person always does it right and you sometimes don't? And so are we making sure that we're coaching the person who isn't and not necessarily only going to the person who does it correctly? I had a fabulous secretary, and because she was so good, I took many, many things to her that I probably wouldn't take to subsequent secretaries. And I again have a fabulous secretary. Now, was I being unfair because I gave her more work than the others? These issues have to be addressed. And certainly in a sales organization, as we assign quotas, are we giving more quota to the people who can be successful than those that can't? Are we being fair to the fact that maybe a particular individual has a handicap or a disability? Are we also being fair to the people who might have a language disadvantage in dealing with a particular marketplace? And are we capturing those differences and handling those fairly? And the other risk, and we've talked about this multiple times, is that we're on a journey and the road is very unclear. We're not sure where it's going to take us, but that's also part of the excitement of what we're doing. And we don't believe that there's an end point. We've consulted with some of the experts, and some of the experts say we are pushing the envelope, so to speak, that we in fact are paving some uncharted landscapes that haven't been charted before. And so this is very exciting for us. And we know that to lead people, our leaders have to walk behind them. For the best leaders, people do not notice their existence. When the best leader's work is done, the people say, "We did it ourselves." So we began this by talking about there is no road from here to tomorrow. There is no highway from here to the future. What leaders have to do is rely on vision. Vision articulated in such a way that we engage the hearts and emotions of people, and that through clarity and defining what it is we want to become and what the values are of the organization that will get us there, we'll begin to chart those uncharted landscapes, and soon we will achieve those visions that we've set out. Your challenge as leaders is to take the journey and find out from whom you are and your organization's strength how you can apply this to becoming a world-class organization in each of your businesses. It will look very difficult because there aren't any paved roads. But when you pave one of those uncharted landscapes, another horizon opens, and the vision becomes stronger. And one day, if you keep moving and keep the people engaged, you'll achieve it. I keep forgetting to look this way.
El reto para nosotros es ahora tratar de incluir todas sus preguntas.
Our challenge now is to handle all of the remaining questions in this last Q&A session, where we will be fielding questions from Ecuador. First,
de Univest
from
en Guayaquil.
Univest in Guayaquil, a leader might make the mistake of trying to apply a vision that's too realistic, too futuristic for the reality of his country, couldn't he?
A vision potentially could be too unrealistic. And I think that as you are, and I'm going to focus on business again, as you're focusing on the business that you're in and the marketplace that you're attempting to serve, I believe that the vision needs to be coincident or congruent with that. If, in fact, your vision for that market, however, does involve, and let's just use an exaggerated example, of I need $3 billion to accomplish the task, and I only have 3 people in my organization, obviously you run into some significant difficulty. However, I believe that the vision should be a challenge, and that if you really think there are ways to accomplish the task, you will find them and in fact can have very stretched visions. I think it's the only way that governments throughout history have developed in countries, as well as the most successful businesses. And certainly in the quality effort, I know that you've heard that you ought to have very aggressive goals and objectives, and needless to say, the vision needs to be ahead of that.
De Guayaquil, L. Enriquez y compañía.
From Guayaquil, L. Enriquez and Company. How can we ensure that a vision lead to the business's development and success?
Could you repeat that question again? I'm not sure I understood.
How can we ensure that a vision lead to the business's development and success?
If there were an insurance policy, I think we'd all buy it. I'm not sure that there is insurance. However, I believe along the way there are certain indicators that you can use. And certain indicators are the structures of and the resources and the people in the business sufficient enough to continue to accomplish your objective, and the time frames that it's taking you, because the marketplace is not going to stand still. And the marketplace is what's going to dictate how long you can stay on one particular course or not. And so I believe, with reference to the marketplace, that in fact you can modify and achieve those objectives and be successful. But there are no guarantees, and that is part of the risk of being in business, and by the way, I think part of the excitement.
Tenemos otra llamada. Vamos a
We
recibir
have another call
del Instituto
coming
Nacional
in
de Capacitación
from
Fiscal
the National Fiscal
Adelante,
Training
Gustavo.
Institute.
¿Podría explicarnos más
Could you
en
explain
qué
a little bit
consiste
more
la Feria del Desarrollo Humano?
about the Human Development Fair?
Yes. Basically what we did was we invited all of our employees in to demonstrate the fact that we were committed to the values that we were talking about as an organization, and that we were committed to them as being an integral and essential part of our future. In doing so, what we did was we artificially divided the ballroom into 6 categories, as I mentioned, and we invited local community organizations into the community family section, into the educational section, into the health section, as well as the government section. And by exposing our people to all the things that were available within their own communities that many of them didn't even know about, and have those people, while they were talking about what they did at their little booths, also demonstrated to the people the importance of being committed, something in the social and the community that they belong to, and the importance of how a commitment transforms itself into the commitment of being committed to the goals of the business. That, in addition to the fact that once you are committed to these types of activities, you in fact develop more skill sets and become a more fully developed person, which we believe, again, is going to be our core differentiator for the future. And the people really couldn't believe we did that we committed the time. It was a very exciting event, series of events, actually.
Volvemos al teléfono para recibir una llamada del Instituto
Back to the
Tecnológico de
phones
Tuxtla
for a
Gutiérrez.
call
Adelante,
from
con
the
pregunta.
Tuxtla Gutierrez Technological Institute.
Hasta ahorita, los comentarios que usted ha dicho es acerca de empresas.
So far, you've been talking about commercial firms, production firms. So my question is, how can we apply the values of academic excellence in an educational institution?
We've actually been working with several educational organizations in the United States, several school districts and several universities, and applying the total quality concepts to the organization. One of the first questions we asked the organization was, who are your customers? Are your customers the students? Are your customers the communities to which they will be graduating into? Are your customers the businesses that they will be working in the future? Who are your customers, and how have you designed your programs so that the products, which might be a bad way to say it, but the products of your institution, the students and graduates, are they prepared to be effective and competitive in those environments and work well within those organizations? Also, I think the thing that became clear is that as the organizations and universities began to define those things, they started to challenge and ask what the values were. And they started to then challenge and ask what their vision was for the future and who they were serving. And so, in fact, we did drive, some of those organizations are driving themselves through the process and are becoming much more effective. Needless to say, the quality tools of work efficiency are being applied as well, and some of them have been very successful. It also applies to state and federal governments, and we've been working with those institutions as well, helping them. A very brief example is that water pollution in the state of New Jersey, our most populated state, we applied the principles and discovered with the government regulatory agencies and with the local community groups that in fact they were working on the incorrect root causes of solving the problem. And so through quality, we were able to back up the pollution process to get to its source and start working there. It's been very successful and very exciting.
Pasamos ahora a una pregunta vía fax que nos
We
llega
now
de Ban
have
Crecer en
a
Tijuana.
fax question from
¿Cómo
Ban
explica
Crecer
el
en
concepto
Tijuana?
de visión y cultura
How do you
bajo el
explain
contexto de las
the
diferencias
concept
culturales
of vision and
Japón?
culture given the cultural differences between the United States and Japan?
The concepts of vision and quality, I think, are consistent. What the culture adds is the different approaches and the richness that the culture brings to how we ought to approach our employees, the marketplace, and our suppliers so that we can achieve quality. I think it's more important, or I think it's very important, I don't know if more important, I think it's very important that we understand who we are in ourselves so that as we tend to adopt things and adapt our organization to those skill sets or those particular tools or functions, that we can translate them for our people to become more successful more quickly. And that's really what the cultural difference and the cultural studies did for us. I believe there are many aspects of your culture in South and Middle America and Mexico that in fact can enhance quality and can help you achieve it much more quickly. And so I think it's really taking advantage of who we are and understanding that. So I don't think it's that we can't be successful in one culture versus another. I think it's applying the principles that we learn from one organization which exists in a particular culture, and as we bring that across, we make the proper translations to engage our people.
Pasamos ahora a otra pregunta que nos llega vía fax.
We now have a fax question from Guayaquil.
Pudiera comenzar de nuevo el proceso que ha descrito.
If you could start the process that you've described over again, how would you do it differently? In what order would you change?
Probably the order that we're doing the values-driven leadership in. As a matter of fact, the journey has gotten us to complete our triangle, and then we stepped back, looked at our triangle or our model and said, now how would we do this again and more effectively? And one of the things that occurred in the organization in which I'm working today is that we became cynics or very skeptical that quality was going to work in the sales organization. And so, in fact, we just ignored it as sort of a matter of course and time and said it'll go away. In fact, what we learned was that for us to be more successful, we did need to engage and use quality as a way of going at it. However, when we reintroduced it beginning with values and ended up with the values-driven leadership model. Universal Card Services, as I mentioned, designed their business on the model that we ended up with, and in fact moved from being a company with no market to being the #2 credit card company in the United States within a 3-year period. So we are approaching it that way. I'm not saying that that's the way everybody ought to do it. But what I'm saying is that it would certainly expedite our success in the future and certainly helping us. And I think it's a challenge for each of you to take a look and discover what might be applicable to you and in the order based on how you translate those requirements into your culture and business.
Recibimos una última llamada del
We
Instituto
have a
Tecnológico
last call
de México.
from
Adelante
the
con su pregunta.
Autonomous Technological Institute of Mexico.
Hará falta un elemento antes que la misión, por ejemplo.
Is there an element missing before the mission? For example, if I have $1 million project,
Quedan maravillados, pero lo consideran muy costoso.
but the institutions that are involved think it's too expensive. Marshall McLuhan had the concept of a global village, which still hasn't taken place. So, does the vision need other elements in order to be carried out?
Yes, the vision certainly needs to be supported by the resources that you have within your organization, your business, or within your governments. It also can challenge those resources, but there must be a way of getting the resources and incorporating them into the direction that you want to go. I believe that there are many visions which may not be achieved, but maybe they should be modified, and parts of those things are very important to achieve to be successful and to better the world in Marshall McLuhan's place.
Muchas gracias, señor Hoffman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman, for the information that you passed along to us, and also thanks to our viewers in Mexico and Ecuador. We trust that this teleconference has been valuable and interesting for all of you. The International Training Center will continue to broadcast programs in this series on management and leadership for the 21st century. We will be sending information along to you for for our next conference in October this year on the topic of benchmarking.